Well, hey there, and welcome back to Heimler's History. Now, we've been going through Unit 7 of the AP U.S. History curriculum, and in the last video, we talked mainly about the new manufacturing and communication technologies that arrived on the scene. And in this video, we're going to stay in the 1920s, but we're going to focus on culture and politics. So if you're ready to get them brain cows milked, let's get to it. So by 1920, more than half of Americans lived in cities, and with this shifting of American demographics, new opportunities were opened up for women, international migrants, and internal migrants, and I'm kind of in the mood to look at each one of those in turn. First, new opportunities opened up for women. Now, generally speaking, most middle-class women were expected to have babies and make their home a haven of rest. But for those women living in urban centers, more opportunities to enter the workforce were available, especially in jobs like nursing and teaching. And women also worked unskilled labor jobs in factories, but don't worry, they usually received a fraction of the wages that men did for performing the same job. Some women also threw off convention during this era by cutting their hair short and smoking and drinking and showing their ankles in public. They were known as the flappers, and they were a kind of symbol of women's liberation during the 20s. Next up on the opportunity train were international migrants. So after World War I was over, there was yet another large influx of immigrants, especially from Southern Europe and Eastern Europe and Asia. And do I even need to tell you what the response was? Like, who can tell me what the response was? Class? Anybody? Anybody? Oh, me? Me? Yeah, it was another backlash of nativism. This same thing happened in the immigration waves of the 1840s and then again in the 1880s, and then in the 1920s it's happening again. You know, nativists be nativists, and they're always going to react strongly when people who are not like them start flooding the American shores. And just to remind you, nativism is the effort to protect the rights of native-born citizens, especially white Anglo-Saxon Protestant natives, against the interests of immigrants. And the truth is, the nativist fears were the same as they were in previous periods. Workers feared that they'd lose their jobs to immigrants who would work for lower wages, and there were others who worried about the pollution of the white race. Now, this nativist backlash actually produced some legislation in the form of two immigration quota acts, which I mentioned in a previous video. First was the Emergency Quota Act of 1921, which limited immigration to 3% of the population measured by the 1910 census. And second was the National Origins Act of 1924, which restricted immigration even further. Okay, third, let's talk about internal migrations, and the big one to know during the 20s was the Great Migration, which, again, I mentioned in another video, but let's talk a little bit more about it here. The Great Migration was just part 2 of the Exodusters movement, which we dealt with in the last period. Huge numbers of the southern black population left the South in order to settle in the North and Midwest. And no small portion of them settled in New York and especially in Harlem, and there something magnificent occurred, namely the Harlem Renaissance, which was a revival of the arts and intellectual pursuits of the recently migrated black population. Under this heading, we see the birth of jazz in the hands of musicians like Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington. Then writers like Langston Hughes and Claude McKay put words to the black experience in America. Another group of writers you should know about during this period were called by Gertrude Stein the Lost Generation. In this group, you had folks like F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ernest Hemingway, and some of their main themes were the pervasive materialism that plagued American culture and the waste of life and resources expended in World War I. Okay, now let's shift and talk about a different kind of cultural crisis, namely the growing division between urban and rural Protestants. Urban Protestants consider themselves modernists, whose faith was large enough to embrace the changing culture with respect to gender roles and Darwin's increasingly popular evolutionary theory of origins. Rural Protestants consider themselves fundamentalists who condemn the degradation of the morals they saw in the cities. And probably the main reason they couldn't abide such changes was because they believed that every word of the Bible must be taken literally. At least that is how they are commonly portrayed. But many fundamentalists weren't as dumb as that makes them sound. They understood that not every word of the Bible is taken literally. Like when God says that he will gather his people under the shelter of his wing, fundamentalists don't think that God is some kind of cosmic chicken. What fundamentalists would say about themselves is not that they take every word of the Bible literally, but that they take every word of the Bible seriously. However, they did take six-day creation presented in Genesis 1 literally, and that led to a great clash that gives us a kind of paradigm for this fight between modernists and fundamentalists. And the event I'm speaking of is the Scopes monkey trial in 1925. So in Tennessee, it was illegal at that time to teach Darwin's theory of evolution, but a saucy teacher by the name of John Scopes decided it was a dumb law and began teaching Darwin and was subsequently arrested. The case was immediately seized upon by the media and it became a highly publicized proceeding. Clarence Darrow defended Scopes and the prosecuting attorney was populist hero and thrice-failed presidential candidate William Jennings Bryan. Now I'm not going to give you a play-by-play of the proceedings, but essentially what you need to know is that under the incisive questioning of Darrow, Bryan and the fundamentalism that he defended ended up looking as if it was unable to defend itself against the onslaught of modernism. In the end, Scopes was indeed convicted for breaking the law, but his conviction was overturned on a technicality. But what's important about this case is that as America watched it unfold, the general sentiment was that modernism had triumphed over fundamentalism. Alright, that's it. If you need help getting an A in your class and a 5 on your exam in May, then click right here and grab my review packet. And if you want me to keep making these videos, I'm not going to be a fundamentalist about it, but you should subscribe. Alright, Heimler out.